everyone, Goddess Allison here, and today I'm going to make a video that is probably going to seem a little bit off the wall. So I hope you're ready for this, and it's probably going to be a really long video, maybe even a video in parts, so I hope you're willing to stick it out with me. I think I might call it something like waking up from the Matrix, like for real, because this morning, or last night, the night that I just slept, I had an experience that makes me believe that this is what is happening to me, that I'm waking up from the Matrix, that this experience that I had was not in the Matrix. And I'm going to tell you what this experience was, and you're welcome to take it as you will, think what you'd like about it, but I'm sharing it with you, and I'm making this YouTube video because, well, in my dream, that was part of what was important, that apparently an Allison, me, in another timeline, or a parallel universe, or a parallel dimension, whatever you want to call it, another me has made YouTube videos describing her, I guess, her out-of-time experiences. It's the only way that I know how to put it. So I'm going to make this video and to share my experience. And hopefully it will help you wake up from the Matrix too. So, a little bit of background about myself, and this is important because it's kind of why I feel like I was able to have this experience outside of the Matrix. And I have a lot of training in holistic health and wellness and healing, but I never really thought of myself as, like, ever being interested in the whole, like, alien conspiracy theory, UFO kind of stuff. Like, I mean, my dad was kind of interested in aliens and UFOs when I was a kid, but it was just kind of like a joke, like something that me and my brother would say to each other, like, oh, if you're bad, the aliens will come and get you, kind of thing. And it was like a joke, like funny, haha, but also kind of like scary that, like, aliens might actually come out of the sky with their UFO spaceships and abduct you, but we never really put too much stock into it. And even as an adult, I never really looked into it. Like, I was open to the idea that ETs exist because I thought that was pretty arrogant of humans to think that we're like the only ones, to think that we're alone in the universe. So I was open to the idea that aliens exist, but I never got into the subject, and I kind of thought that all that stuff was a bunch of hooey, that it was a bunch of like mumbo jumbo conspiracy theory stuff. And a little over a year ago, I found a video, I must have been interested in hypnotherapy or something, because I found this video, stumbled on this video by, I'm sure she's a lovely woman. I'm probably going to meet her someday, going on a retreat with her group, but her name's Bridget Nielsen, and she made a video talking about her hypnotherapy experience with Barbara Lamb and hybrid alien children. And at the time I saw this video, I thought she was totally, completely nuts, and I wasn't open really to the idea of factual information about extraterrestrials. So I kind of dismissed her video, but the info was there in my brain until I started watching this show called Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia TV. And Corey Good and David Wilcock have this show on Gaia TV at Gaia.com, or you can go to blueavians.com and watch Cosmic Disclosure, and it's like a little subscription, but it's totally worth it. And again, nobody is, just like with my last video with the cavity healing, diet. No one is prompting me to tell you about this show. No one is promoting me or like paying me or anything. I'm just telling you about it because I like it, and I really received a lot of great education from this show. But basically, Corey Good talks about the issue of extraterrestrials and UFOs and ETs and all of that within the context of our human history and maybe even our American history. I'm an American, so from the United States of America, so I'm just going to speak in this video from that perspective. But he talks about our history and history of the world, of the globe, really, having to do with how the ETs fit in that and what's still going on today. So basically, he says, during World War I and II, the Nazi Germans had developed these flying craft, these anti-gravity flying craft, because they were trying to beat us in the war. And when the U.S. found out that the Germans had this technology, it was because the U.S. had spies in Germany during the war, and when they found out that the Germans had this technology that was better than theirs, it was really too embarrassing to admit. The Germans flew a bunch of their craft over the Capitol building, and it was basically like a threat to the United States, saying, you better tell the world about this, that we're the best, we got this technology, or we're gonna, or, you know, you better work with us, or we're gonna do something, I guess. I don't know. But the U.S. wanted the technology, so they brought in a bunch of scientists and physicists after they surrendered in the war, because the U.S. won the war. And the reason I'm going into this, I'm not going to get into much into the whole premise of the Cosmic Disclosure show. Anyone's welcome to go watch it, but the reason I'm touching on this piece specifically is because it is very important in the experience that I had this morning, very early in the morning. So in our timeline now, the consciousness, I'm making this YouTube video and putting it on YouTube, the Germans kind of threatened the U.S. and said, you know, tell the world or else, or work with us or else. So the U.S. Kind of assimilated all these Nazi German scientists. It's called Operation Paperclip. Anyone can go read about Operation Paperclip on Wikipedia, and Operation Highjump, where Admiral Byrd tried to go to Antarctica and take out the Nazi Germans at their secret base, but it didn't work. It failed. But in Operation Paperclip, all these Nazi German scientists came over to basically cooperate and infiltrate the U.S. government. Both sides, the way Corey Good describes it, is both sides thought that they would learn the other side's secrets and eventually conquer them. And that's one reason of why we're in the mess that we're in today, because these Nazi Germans, and the word on street from the U.S. spies was that these Nazi Germans were having help from an off-world race of peoples, of humanoid peoples, to build these flying crafts. But they were developed by humans, they were built by humans, but they had info and input into how to build them basically by ETs, by aliens. And so in our history, all of that was hushed up, it was shushed up, it was top secret, it was only for the government to know and basically cover it up and ridicule and put conspiracy theory label on anybody who talked about it. So I've read all of David Wilcock's books. He's the host of Cosmic Disclosure, and he interviews Corey Good. And I recently finished his latest book, Ascension Mysteries, revealing the cosmic battle between good and evil. And I was more curious about British videos and who Barbara Lamb is, because Barbara Lamb was the hypnotherapist that Bridget was talking about going to see to recall her abduction experiences. And so I want to know who Barbara Lamb was. So I read Barbara Lamb's book, Alien Experiences. And in Barbara Lamb's book, she gives a bunch of qualifiers for someone who may have abduction experiences but doesn't remember them. And one of the things that Bridget says in her videos, that her family follows a channeled ET whose name is Bashar, and Bashar lives, he's the, I guess, the product of the genetic hybridization between the Greys, some of the Greys and the humans, and he is in, he's not accessible in our physical realm because he's in another vibratory dimension or something like that. But Bashar says that as many as 47% of humans have had abduction experiences, but we don't remember them. And what Corey Good describes is that the ETs have a treaty, or like a prime directive, I guess, as if you want to put it in Star Trek lingo, that they're not to interfere with our free will, that they leave us alone to like develop at our own pace, kind of thing. That's why we don't have open contact with them in our society right now. So maybe it's a really large percentage of people that have been abducted and don't remember it, and of course they have to clear your memory of the abduction so that they're not interfering with your free will. But I never really thought that I was the kind of person that had alien abduction experiences. I've never had like flashbacks or bad dreams, nightmares, or anything that would lead me to believe that I needed to go see a hypnotherapist for this issue or get support or something. But Barbara Lamb lists in her book Alien Experiences some of the qualifiers of people who may have had abduction experiences and don't remember it. And besides some of the minor ones, like I look at the clock a lot, and it's 11:11 or 10:10 or 4:44, one of those like synchronistic numbers. And I've always felt like I've had guidance in my life to learn holistic health and healing and spirituality outside of a religion, like not mixed with a lot of religious dogma. So those are kind of the minor ones that were on the list, but some of the more major ones are like mysterious scars. I have this weird scar on, well, it's not a weird scar, it's just this scar on my leg, on my inner right thigh, that I don't know where I got it or how I got it. I always assumed that it was like a bug bite that didn't heal properly, and I know about when it appeared. It was when I lived in an eco-village, and there were like mosquitoes there and chiggers, and sometimes I got bug bites. It was just like a normal thing, and I know it appeared when I had some bug bites in that area, but it never healed the same way that bug bites just heal and go away and they don't leave scars. And I even had a friend ask me, like, what's this on your leg? What's that from? Like, what's that scar from? What's the story about that one? And I was like, I actually don't know. I think it was a bug bite that didn't heal properly. So I have this scar that I don't know where I got it, and on my inner thigh. And also another qualifier of someone who may have had abduction experiences, an instance of missing time. And I don't have any instances of missing time, but one morning within the past year, and by this time I think I had started watching Cosmic Disclosure, but within the past year, one morning, and today is October 18th, 2016, the day I'm making this video. And within the past year, I woke up one morning and my watch, the watch on my wrist, was 3 hours behind the iPod that was sitting next to my bed. And I thought that was so weird, like if my watch, but my watch was working like normally. I thought if it had stopped in the middle of the night, if it ran out of batteries, that would be weird that it was still working right now, even though it was 3 hours behind, and maybe it was slowing down, right? So I thought, well, that's strange. I'm going to set my watch to the normal time, and I knew that my iPod was the right time because I looked on my computer and it was the same time as my iPod. So I thought, well, my watch is just slow, and I'll turn it to the right time that is on my iPod, and I'll see if it conks out on me later, like it's running out of batteries. But it never did. It still worked. My watch worked and kept time regularly for the rest of that day and, and beyond. And I was like, that was so weird to me. And because I had seen some episodes of Cosmic Disclosure, I just kind of joked with myself, like, what kind of wormhole portal adventure did you get yourself into last night? Because I had no explanation for why, and I didn't really tell anyone because it's just weird, a weird thing that no one can explain or think anything of. So it was really unusual, but I never thought much of it. I certainly never thought, oh, I'm having alien abduction experiences. But after I read Barbara Lamb's book, I started to think maybe I should go get hypnotherapy for some of this stuff so that I can maybe uncover something about these instances. But I'm starting to think I don't need hypnotherapy because I remember an instance from this morning. I remembered an experience from this morning, and I'm going to describe it to you. It's not like any alien abduction experience, but it's definitely an out-of-the-matrix experience, and you'll see why when I explain this. So, last night, I went to bed. It was around 10 p.m. I was pretty tired because I work a lot in the week, but I try to get enough rest. So it was 10 p.m., like a decent time to go to bed, and I thought, I'm going to get up at 7 or 8, go to work, like I normally do. And I had just finished watching the latest episode of Wisdom Teachings on Gaia TV. That David Wilcock has some other shows besides Cosmic Disclosure, and I've seen most of the episodes of his other shows. And Wisdom Teachings, so after... Well, it was called Deeper into Our Fractalized Universe, and it was all about the fractalization of our reality. And you're going to have to kind of bear with me because when I woke up from this experience, I wrote down like literally 10 pages of these like chicken scratch notes so that I wouldn't forget what happened, but I'm not gonna forget what happened because I remember it like it was yesterday. Like you remember what you did yesterday. It was that conscious for me, that experiential. So I had just finished watching Wisdom Teachings. I went to bed like normal last night around 10:30 p.m. And then I woke up at around and I looked at my watch and it was only 1:30 in the morning, and I was like, what? Like, that's weird. Why would I wake up only 3 hours or so after I went to bed? I never do that, especially when I'm tired. Like, why would I wake up at 1:30 in the morning? Like, it's not morning yet. So I thought that was weird, but I just kind of laid down and tried to go back to sleep, and my computer, the screen was off. It was supposed to be asleep, but it came on. The screen came on my computer, and I was like, well, that's weird. I'll just put it back to sleep, as maybe it's acting funny. Maybe there's like a glitch in the cord or like something, but I didn't think anything of it. Put the computer back to sleep, try to go back to sleep. The computer's waking up again. I put it to sleep. It's supposed to be asleep. So I was like, what's wrong with my computer? Is there a cord loose? No. Is the mouse on? No. Put the computer back to sleep, try to go back to sleep. Computer wakes itself up again. I'm like, what's wrong with you? And I try to put the computer to sleep, but instead of all of the normal options of, sleep, shut down, and all of those, it said update and shut down or update and restart. And I was like, oh, okay, my computer's trying to update itself in the middle of the night, and maybe it woke me up or something, but that doesn't make sense to me because I woke up before my computer started acting funky. So I know that I checked on my computer. I selected the option update and shut down because I wanted this thing to turn off. I wanted it to stop waking up and waking me up. I wanted to go back to sleep. So made my computer update and shut down. I laid down, tried to go back to sleep. I kind of opened my eye to be like, okay, computer's updating. It's doing its normal thing. I can go back and rest. And open my eyes again. And it's like you know, it's like 2:30 in the morning and my computer is turning itself on. Like, it must have updated itself and restarted itself. And I was like, I know I clicked update and shut down. Like, devil computer, what are you doing? And so I put it to sleep and I laid down and I was like, what is happening? What is going on? What is wrong with my sleep? And I got this sense from my psyche that I was about to be taken, and so I didn't actually want to go to sleep. Like I had trouble getting back to sleep, and by the time I looked at my watch again, it was like 3 o'clock, 3 a.m., and I was like, I need to go back to sleep, I need to go back to sleep. And my psyche was telling me like that I was about to get taken, and I didn't want to go back to sleep. I was having trouble falling asleep, and I kind of told myself, F off, kind of like, you know, it's kind of funny, but I said to myself, well, good, in my head, I was like, well, good, now I really need to go back to sleep, because maybe I'll remember something this time and I won't need hypnotherapy. Like go to sleep, gosh dang it, computer, stop waking up. So I looked at my watch one last time. It was 3:30, and I was like, I gotta go to sleep. I gotta go to sleep. I kind of laid down and like kind of forced my psyche to like go back to sleep. Like, I don't care if I'm gonna get taken by aliens. I gotta sleep. Sleep is more important right now. If I don't remember anything in the morning, good. Like, fine, go to sleep. So I went to sleep. It must have been like shortly after 3:30 a.m. that I fell asleep. And then I woke up, but I was in a hospital. I thought it was going to be morning. I thought I was going to wake up in my normal bed, but I was in a hospital. And I was like, what the heck's going on? And I need to make this video in parts. So it might be skippy or jumpy in a couple places, but if I make the whole video, it might be too long to upload or download, get into my computer, or whatever. So I'm going to stop the video and I'll pick up where I left off. So I woke up and I was in this hospital, and I thought it, you know, that's strange, but this hospital had virtual reality, and this is something that I just kind of understood as being normal in this hospital. It was kind of like the holodeck on Star Trek. This hospital had virtual reality, okay. And there are these two guys there at the hospital. One man was kind of older gentleman, gray hair, very doctorly, but he didn't wear like a lab coat or uniform or anything like that. He wore like regular civilian clothes, nothing that looked out of the ordinary to me. And his name was Peter, the doctorly guy, and then there was Nicholas, Nicholas looked, you know, to be about maybe very late 20s to maybe very early 40s, like kind of around my similar age. And I'm 32 right now, and so Nicholas kind of looked to be, you know, near my similar age. And Nicholas was always there to like take care of me while I was in the hospital. But Peter only came in sometimes when like something needed to happen, something needed to be done, maybe like an experiment or something. So Peter was always there, the younger guy, and then Nicholas was always there, the younger guy. He's always there to take care of me, and Peter was like the older doctorly man. He only came in sometimes when we were doing virtual reality or experiments or something was happening. So I was in this hospital, and me and Peter and Nicholas, we were in this bedroom, and it didn't look like my bedroom here on Earth. Like, I'm just going to say here on Earth, because that's the only reference point really that I have to speak of it to, or maybe just like in my life right now, in my real life. It's kind of weird to me to say my real life after having had this experience, but in my real life, this bedroom that we were in didn't look like my bedroom that I have in real life. It it had like wood floors and didn't look super nice, like a super rich person's bedroom, but it wasn't like a poor person's bedroom. It was like middle class bedroom, pretty chill, really cool. And Nicholas and Peter were there, and they were like pretending to be spiritual people, you know, like the kind of people I know in my life, or like the cool kind of people I go to festivals and hang out with, and we just hang out and have a good time. And that's kind of what Peter and Nicholas were doing. They're like lighting candles and lighting incense, and we were just like hanging out. Like it's almost as if they were kind of trying it on, like a role, like actor play, but they were really like trying to have an experience of being these spiritual people. And we were just hanging out in this bedroom, and then the doorway to the bedroom turned into a wall, like a brick or a stone wall, not like the red small bricks, but like large stone type bricks. It turned into this brick wall, and it was almost like Peter and Nicholas were monitoring me to see what my reaction would be about kind of being trapped in this bedroom, not having a doorway way out. But I told them, I said, I know this is virtual reality, so let's kind of like basically like knock it off. I know this is just for pretend, you know? And so the virtual reality shut down. It was kind of like I said, like the holodeck on Star Trek. Shut down, and then we were in the hospital room like it actually looked like. And there was a doorway kind of behind us, a real doorway for the room. And Peter, I think the older doctorly guy, kind of like harumphed out of the room, like kind of stormed out, like he was a little upset. Like maybe this experiment didn't go as planned. And I followed him out the door into the next room. And as soon as I came out in the door, through the door, he kind of came at me like really sternly. He said to me in a stern voice, he was like, "You know those timelines that you leaked?" And I was like, "What time that I leaked? What do you mean that I leaked?" He goes, "You know those timelines that you leaked? Whatever timelines they were that you leaked, you make them more likely to happen because you give more energy to them and they're stronger." You know, like, and I was like, what do you mean? It's kind of like, almost like I had made YouTube videos of timelines that I had leaked to like the public, and he was kind of shaking his finger, like scolding me, like, "You know those timelines you leaked, whatever they were, you gave them more energy and they're more likely to come true because they're stronger." And I wanted him to explain. I was like, "Can you clarify that? What do you mean by timelines that I leaked?" And but then there was a voice over, it was in my pocket or like on my hip, like either strapped to my hip and dangling there like in my pocket, I don't know, a voice on a device. And I picked up the device, and it looked like my iPod does in my real life, the one I'm using to record this video on. It looked like my iPod, but I knew that this device had been disguised as my iPod so that I would behave normally towards it, so I wouldn't really think anything of it, this device that I had to carry around while I was at this hospital. And it was talking in my pocket. I took out the device, and on the screen was me. It was me, like in another timeline or something. That's how I understood it. It was me. She was talking to Peter, and I was like, it's kind of like, "Here, like phone call for you. It's me." I didn't kind of really do that, but I was just kind of like showing him like this person talking to you. And she was kind of telling Peter something, kind of in her defense, about making. They didn't use the term that she had made YouTube videos, but that's the sense that I got from this conversation, that she had made some kind of public YouTube videos about her out of time experience. And she was talking to Peter kind of in her defense from his scolding, but she was also telling him, "You got the wrong Allison in the wrong timeline." Like basically you just scolded the wrong Allison. You just accused the wrong Allison of doing what I had done. And because she was talking to him over this device, he knew that that it was the wrong Allison, that he had just kind of scolded, that, this virtual reality shut down, and he scolded the incorrect Allison out of his emotional kind of upset. And so that's what she told him, and it was clear to him that this was the Allison that he meant to scold. But I wanted more clarification. I wanted more clarity on what the heck was going on. And I was like, I asked Peter, I was like, can you explain to me what you meant by those timelines that I leaked? Like, what timelines? Did I make YouTube videos? Like, what was up? What was happening? And Peter wouldn't explain it to me. And then I lost consciousness, and I must have, gone to sleep or something. And the next time I woke up, I was still in the hospital. I was like, what? I keep waking up in the hospital. And literally, I feel like I had spent, after this experience, I felt like I had spent 3 days in this hospital. And I woke up in the hospital room more than 3 times, but the sense of time that I got from having this experience was about 3 days, or about an evening to a full day to a morning time. And so the next time I woke up, I was in the hospital bed, in the hospital room, but it was another virtual reality scenario that was happening around me. It looked like a brown rocky kind of desert, like Mars or something, but it was dark. It wasn't totally dark where it was like pitch black night, but it was very dim, there wasn't much sunlight at this time of day. And this rocky brown desert landscape, I was in the bed out in the middle of this landscape, and there's this train that pulled up with these train cars, maybe 2 or 3 train cars, pulled up near my bed, a little bit far off, but near my bed. And this train was the same color as the landscape, almost as if they were trying to camouflage the train in the landscape. And the train cars were shaped like really large coffins, coffin shaped, but they weren't coffins, they were train cars, and they were like giant coffins. And the lid to the first train car was open, and there was a dark cloth, a black or dark gray cloth draped over the lid. So you couldn't see what was inside, but I could tell that the lid to the first car was open, and I needed to go over there and look in. So I got out of bed, and I knew that I was kind of under the impression I was still in the hospital, but this was another virtual reality experience, like the holodeck kind of thing. So I went over to the train and lifted up the cloth, got underneath the cloth, and looked into the train car, and it was me in a bed. But I looked like me, but a little younger, maybe early 20s. And I was like, oh, it's me. And I said to this girl, I said to her, hello, Allison, I am you, and you are me. And this girl looked up at me, and she had 2 irises in her left eye. And I was like, oh, I didn't say oh, but I was a little bit surprised, but it wasn't weird to me, because in my real life, in high school, ever since high school, I had been drawing these people. I doodle a lot on my notes in school, and I had been drawing these people with 2 irises in their eyes. It started out as just 2 irises in one eye. I'm pretty sure it was the left eye too. But then I started drawing 2 irises in both eyes, because I thought that was pretty cool. But maybe me in another timeline has 2 irises in the left eye. I got some kind of genetic anomaly mistake or something. And so she looked up at me, and she had 2 irises in her left eye, but she kind of looked startled, or a little scared, I had interrupted her in her bedroom, that she thought that I was in her bedroom. And I was saying to her, hello, Allison, I am you and you are me, but in another timeline, and I hope we can speak again soon. That's what I wanted to say to her, and I hope that we can speak again soon. And before I could get the word soon out, this girl reached up onto a shelf that was like beside her bed, took down this like bell-shaped looking toy, maybe like either plastic or metal, and it was bell-shaped. She had the handle, and she was about to like clobber me over the head. Like, I'd startled her in her room, and she was about to clobber me over the head. And before I could say the word soon, like I was gonna say, I hope we can speak again soon. Before I could say soon, she was like almost whacking me over the head, and I fell back to duck the blow. And I thought that the hospital floor was gonna catch my fall, but it didn't. I fell down this like dark tunnel, like whooshy tunnel, like going up, and she was up, fell down the tunnel, and she was up there like looking over the side of her bed at me, watch me fall down this tunnel, like kind of maybe regretting that she'd try to clobber me over the head. She realized that I looked like her, maybe I was older, and she kind of seemed like she regretted trying to bash me over the head with this thing, and now it was gone. I was whooshing down the tunnel. And so I fell down the tunnel, and I lost consciousness, but I woke up again, the dang hospital. This time I was like pretty perturbed. I was like, I'm still in this hospital. What is going on? And I thought I was going to go back to my bed by now, to my real life, and it seemed like the same day, like the whole desert virtual reality scenario seemed like it happened more in the morning time, and then this scenario was like more afternoon, evening of the second day that I was in the hospital. And so I woke up again, I was in the hospital, but there's like a virtual reality scenario scene playing, and there's this bed. And it looked like this bed, it was like a double bed, lower than my hospital bed, and it looked like it was all laid out, like someone was trying to be romantic. That's the only way that I know how to describe it, is like someone was trying to be romantic. And so I went up to the bed, like, I don't think I'm missing anything, because I haven't really even been looking at my notes that much, because I remember this so vividly, like it happened to me like yesterday. I'm just describing to you an event that happened to me, more clear than most of the dreams that I've had. And I used to be better at remembering my dreams, but I haven't been lately remembering them, because I've been kind of tired and stressed out working a lot. But this was not a dream. So I'm just gonna recall it like I remember. Even though I wrote down these notes because I didn't want to forget anything important. But there's this bed all laid out like someone was trying to be romantic. And I went up to the bed, and I was like, oh gosh, like, who are they gonna make me try to have sex with this time? You know, like this time, like they had done this before. Like, this was not an unusual scenario they were trying to put me through. So I went up to the bed, and this black lady, or, you know, I won't say that term because that doesn't sound very nice, but this African American woman sat up out of the bed, and she had on like turquoise, light bluish kind of lingerie, and she sat up in the bed, and she was all like trying to be sexy and romantic, and I laughed. I knew that Peter and Nicholas were up in the control room for like this virtual reality scenario, so I laughed at them, and I was like, come on guys, that would never work. This is not my type. Like, and you know this, kind of like, I didn't say and you know this, but I kind of was like, they already know that this wouldn't work. Like, why would they do that? And they kind of were talking at me from the control booth. They were like, well, come on, you know, like, they're kind of half joking, but they're like, come on, can't you, like, get excited by that? doesn't that excite you? Like, why can't you get turned on by that? But at this point, it was kind of like they were just doing their jobs. They were just going through all the options to make sure that I didn't have any kind of hidden buttons, or that they were trying to deduce something about my sexual arousal or my sexual activity or whatever, my sexual experiences, my emotions or whatever. And at this point, they already had figured it out. They'd already found out what got me going. So they were just going through the list, going through all the options. African American woman, so at this point, it's kind of a funny joke, that they were trying out. And I said to them, because I knew they had this technology, and I said to them, well, if you can make Peter look like a sexy, handsome young man, he should get down here in this virtual reality, and I might just have sex with him. And I was like, I thought that they might actually make me go through with it, because Peter had always been really fascinated with me, really drawn to me. Like, I don't know if it was a sexual attraction, but it was like a working relationship attraction. But it was definitely very interested, very fascinated and attracted to me as I don't know, maybe I was his specimen, his experiment, I don't know. But that's why I kind of joked about this. I thought they might go through with it, fulfill some kind of fantasy of Peter's, but they did not really appreciate what I had said. Apparently what I had said was not totally appropriate. So they shut down the virtual reality scenario, and I lost consciousness again. And I woke up the next morning. I was still in the hospital, and I was just like, dang it, how am I still here? And I woke up and the lights came on, like it was early morning, just becoming morning. The lights came on. Peter was there sitting in his chair, or no, Nicholas was there sitting in his chair. He got up, and Nicholas was there kind of in the room, ready to attend to me or interact with me. And there's also this monkey running around in the room, and apparently this monkey, it was about the size of a cat. It was very familiar to me, like I had met this monkey before, or I had known this monkey before. I had spent time with this monkey, maybe at the other times that I visited this hospital. There's this monkey in the room, and this monkey had been sent into the room to provide companionship or comfort or something like that. And wake up, I'm in the hospital bed, and I ask Nicholas, he's standing there near the window, so there's a window in this room. I could even draw the floor plan of this hospital room that I had to stay in. And there was a window in the room, and light was coming through, but it wasn't like I could look out and see anything or see where I was. But Nicholas was standing over there by the window, and I asked him, I was like, it seemed like I was there longer than usual. My stay had been a lot longer than usual. And I said to Nicholas, let's see, I'm going to find where I wrote what I asked him, because I can tell you I remember, but I want to know what I wrote when I woke up. I just asked Nicholas, when am I going back? When am I going to be sent back? Because it seemed like I had been there longer than usual. This stay was too long. It was prolonged. And he told me that I couldn't go back yet because they needed me to heal my other timelines. So somehow I knew that this was because I had become more conscious in my timeline, and they needed me, the awake and aware one, to heal my other timelines, the me's in other times, in other, I don't know, other timelines was the term that that I use or that I got in this this experience, but other people in listening to this YouTube video might think, oh, other timelines, parallel universes, other realities, other dimensions, like something like that. But so they needed me in my timeline, because I was more awake and aware consciously, to help heal the me's, or to help heal the other timelines somehow. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna be here for a little while. I didn't know how long, and Nicholas wasn't really gonna tell me, but he was just kind of like, he was just like, you know, play with Muffin and be happy, kind of like thing. Muffin was the name of this little monkey that was in the room, and so I was like, okay. And so I went. He was basically like, don't worry about it. Play with Muffin, be happy. I know you're here for longer than usual, but he wasn't really saying all that stuff. That was just kind of like what was going on. And so I got out of my bed. I picked Muffin up. Muffin was this monkey, like the size of a cat, and I was holding it. It was hugging me. It was like, it gave like the best hugs. And I knew that this monkey had been trained to be comforting and affectionate, and its fur was so soft, like almost like, and it was about maybe this thick, yay thick, you know, an inch thick or so. And my fingers just kind of sunk into the fur a little bit, and the fur was super soft, almost like it was like a synthetic puffy fleece, you know. But I knew that this monkey had been bred to have fur this soft, and it wasn't as dense as fleece. It was like still like hair, like fur. So I picked this monkey up. It was so soft. I was hugging it, gave me a hug. It really did kind of make me feel better. And I was holding the monkey, and there was this, there was some food in a box next to my bed. And so I was holding the monkey. I lifted up the lid to the box. The box was like a dark color, like black or really dark brown. And I took out this like package of food. It didn't have any markings on it, any like labels. And then I put Muffin on the bed, and it was like a bowl, this package, like one of those disposable plastic type bowls, like takeout boxes, like the recyclable takeout boxes. But it was bowl shaped, and there was a white like sealed lid, round sealed lid. And so I peeled back the seal, and inside were these like, it looked like kind of like puffed O cereal. Like in my real life, I work at a preschool too, and sometimes I see the kids having their lunch these like puffed O cereal. It doesn't look like Cheerios, but it's kind of like a puffed O. And then that was in this bowl, and there were also these other flakes of like, looked kind of like dried seaweed. And I tried one of the puffed O cereal, and I tried the dried seaweed flake, and it tasted like dried seaweed, but this was kind of like processed food, and it didn't really appeal to me. It didn't really taste good anymore, and so I just kind of put it in the waste receptacle that was below the box of food. And they had this food in my room because they knew, or they thought they knew, that I liked it. Or maybe Allison's in other timelines liked it. Or maybe I'd eaten it before when I was there, but because my consciousness was waking up and was kind of like not really into processed food anymore, I didn't really like it this time. I didn't want to eat it. And Nicholas was there, and he was kind of a bit like frustrated that I wasn't eating, that I probably had barely eaten anything for the 3 days that I'd been there. And they hadn't quite figured it out yet, like what I liked this time. They couldn't have, because my consciousness had really developed or taken a leap since I'd been in this hospital last. And so I wasn't really eating much, or like barely eating, and Nicholas was, and this stay was prolonged, like longer than usual, because it was going to be longer, and Nicholas was kind of kind of frustrated that I wasn't eating. I'd just thrown it away. And so I got up on the bed, and he's like, just eat something. And Muffin jumped up on the bedside table, like the nightstand place that was right beside my bed, and Muffin started mixing up these drinks. And there was these 3 drinks. One of them was purple, like kind of fizzy, and the other one was blue and had ice in it, and the other one was red, like behind the other 2. Like, there are these 3 drinks, like they had left them for me on each day, but I hadn't drank them because I didn't like, this time I visited the hospital, I wasn't really down with like how they tasted, I guess, or something, or I was really kind of off-put by processed food now. But they had brought me these drinks because they were making drinks that somebody in my timeline would like, maybe. But they were really like bright colors, like blue number 40 or something. I don't know. They were kind of like otter popped color, and they didn't seem appealing to me. And they were in these glasses that were kind of shaped like this, and like a martini glass kind of on top, but not, and had a neck on it, and like a bowl, and then a stand with a round thing like a regular wine glass would, but this was a different shaped glass, and had a really like comfortable rim to drink out of. And I got the sense there could have been straws if I wanted straws, but these glasses didn't have straw in them. And Muffin was on the bedside table, kind of like mixing them up, like taking the ice out of the blue one, put it in the purple one, and mix some red with the purple one. And the red one wasn't fizzy and it didn't have ice in it, but the blue one, the ice in the blue one, it was like it didn't melt like we know of ice melting. So it could have sat there for like a day or so, and the ice wouldn't have melted. It would have just been cold, like tasted like it was right out of the refrigerator or something. And here was Muffin like mixing all these drinks, and I was joking with Muffin. I was like, "What are you doing? Like, I'm really not gonna drink those now. What are you trying to do? Drug me? Poison me?" And I was kind of trying to joke with this little monkey, and I wasn't sure how intelligent it was, but I was secretly scared that this monkey knew what it was doing. It wasn't just mixing things around for fun like kiddo playtime, that it intentionally like knew like how to make the drink taste better or something. Like, I wasn't drinking them, so maybe it was going to mess around with them and figure it out, or maybe it wanted some of it. Maybe the monkey wanted some, but I was joking with it, like, what are you trying to do, poison me or drug me? Because I knew that Peter and Nicholas used some kind of method to make me lose consciousness and then wake up again in the hospital several hours later or whatever. And so I was joking with the monkey, and Nicholas was over by the window, and he was just like, just drink something, just eat something, and you'll be fine. Go back to sleep. Like, kind of like, you'll be fine. Like, we're not trying to drug you, you know. Go back to sleep. And I told him that I wasn't going to drink anything, and I didn't want to go back to sleep. But I felt this urge that I needed to go into the next room and see how things were progressing, as if like I had already known what was going on in the room, and I wanted to go see how things were coming along. So I went into the next room, the doorway that was on this side of the bed to me, and so there was like a doorway here and a doorway on this side of the bed. Like, I could draw the floor plan of this room, and there was a window in the room, but it was like a window, but the light was coming in, but I couldn't see out. Like, I couldn't see like where I was, or what was out there, the buildings or anything. And then those two doors were like to the back, and then there was a door kind of on this side, and it was more to the front of the, more open, like going out to the public or something like that. And these doors were like going back to the back surgery room or something. And so on this door, I went into this door, and there was, walked in the door, there was this, and I walked around like this table looking thing, and there was like this long metal table, and there was a girl laying on the table, and it was me. It was another me from another timeline. She looked like me, but she was maybe like teenager, and she was definitely like too young to die, but she was dying like on this table, and they were trying to save her. So I walked around the table, and so now the table is in front of me, and the girl's on the table, and she looks like she's dying, and they're trying to save her, and there's a nurse there. And this nurse looks humanoid, but she doesn't look human. So, like, throughout my experience thus far, Peter and Nicholas looked human to me, like normal guys, and just wearing clothes, regular civilian clothes, like whatever they wanted. But this nurse looked like a cross between the gray aliens, like with the big eyes and the small bodies and the light skin, grayish, greenish gray, like beigeish, whatever, whitish skin, a cross between the gray aliens and some kind of like an insectoid humanoid, like a grasshopper or like a praying mantis kind of thing. Her body had the smoothness of a gray alien, but the shape of like an insectoid praying mantis. I didn't really think that was anything too strange, because I knew in Bridget Nielsen's some of her videos that she explained that some of the gray aliens that that stereotypical image of alien that we have in our society, some of them are actually us from another timeline where they exploded nuclear bombs in a nuclear war and rendered the surface of their planet uninhabitable, and they were forced to live underground for thousands of years. Thus they developed large black eyes, because they were living underground in like more dim light, large black eyes, and like smaller, more like spindly bodies with pale skin, because they were evolving underground. And the reason that they had come back in time to our timeline to make a hybrid genetic and breeding, like hybrid program between, this is why they were abducting humans, making a hybrid program between humans and these, what we would call aliens, but they're not actually aliens, they're just us in another timeline. They're making a hybrid program to make hybrids of themselves and us because they were having trouble reproducing and they wanted to carry on their race. So in my real life, I knew that information, these, and there are some nasty, mean greys, but I guess apparently there are some benevolent species of greys also, just like there are mean, nasty people and nice. The ones that Bridget is talking about are apparently they're pretty benevolent, and they're trying to make hybrid children between our genetics and their genetics, so that they can carry on their race and their hybrid children can eventually live with us on Earth someday when there's full disclosure and first contact and whatever, and they can carry on their species. So I knew that explanation from my real life from Bridget's YouTube videos. So this hybrid looking gray insectoid wasn't like odd, like off-putting to me, because I knew from Cosmic Disclosure that Corey Good described that some of the ETs looked like humanoid insectoids. So I just assumed that this was a cross between a gray alien and an insectoid, and I kind of got the sense that this nurse had like an exoskeleton under her skin, and her body was like smooth like a gray's, and maybe like 5'5" and but she looked like a insectoid, and she had big eyes, and it was a little more dim in this room that I was in with the girl on the table. That was me, kind of like a teenager, that this nurse was like trying to save from dying. And the nurse didn't seem like she had, like Nicholas and Peter, they had regular clothes on. The nurse was not dressed in any kind of uniform or outfit. It wasn't like she was naked, like that was inappropriate. She just didn't have much in the way of like clothing covering her, and that was okay. So I was in the room, and there was that me from another timeline on a table that she was trying to save, but they had also brought in me's in different stages of life from other timelines. There was like a baby me and a child me. Baby was like in this basket, and the child maybe was about like 7, maybe 6 or 8, something around there, and the baby started crying, and the child me like picked up the baby out of this basket and was like holding it, like trying to like console the baby, like kind of bouncing, like rocking, and I was kind of impressed with myself, like as a kid, like knowing how to kind of soothe the baby, because in my real life I have younger siblings, and I had a little brother by 7 years old, and I knew how to hold a baby. So this child was holding this baby and trying to soothe it, make it stop crying, and these kids, the baby and the kid me, had this kind of like glazed over, like scared look on their face, like they didn't know what was happening. And the nurse said to me, she said, "You remember that glazed over look all too well, don't you?" And what she was basically saying is that she, like the undertone of that was that she wanted me to go over there and interact with them and make sure that they were doing all right, that they were comforted, that I would comfort them and make sure they weren't so scared there. And this woman, I get, like, she seemed like a woman hybrid person. She was like very nurturing, very nursely, motherly, like nursing. She was a nurse, so she wanted me to go over to the kids and comfort them. She was trying to like fix the Allison on the table, and so I went over to the kid, me holding the baby, and I said, "Hi, Allison," like kind of like I might do to like a scared or like shy kid at the preschool where I work here. And the kid holding the baby, like, she seemed to respond to me, and then I was kind of like, oh, well, I was thinking in my head, like, I just kind of assumed that all of these me's were named Allison, but maybe they weren't, you know, but maybe they were, I guess, I don't know, but the kid seemed not so scared, like I was there and I seemed familiar to her, because I was her older, like 32-year-olds, but she was looking at me from her perspective and maybe a little calmed down because she saw that I was there and seemed familiar. And the nurse took the baby from the child and she put the baby in like a basin, it wasn't really a crib, it was like smaller, it was like a bowl, like the only reason I know how to describe it is like a bowl for a baby. It was a baby bowl. She put the baby in the bowl. It's like a metal looking bowl fit just for baby's body, and put a white cloth over the bowl, and the baby calmed down and was happy in the bowl, like not happy like laughing, but it was calm, it wasn't crying anymore, it was in the bowl. And the child was there, and then I looked over to this side of me and there was another me, but as a she was an old lady me. She was an old person me. And I was like, oh, you must be me as an older person. Like, I was trying not to be rude, you know, like, you must be me as an old lady. I didn't want to say that to her. I was like, you must be me as an older person. Can I give you a hug? And she was just kind of like, okay, like she was leaning against the wall or whatever, just kind of observing what was happening. And she gave me a hug, and I was hugging her, and she looked like me, but she was a few inches taller, and her body was more plump. Like, she wasn't fat, but she was just like womanly. And I hugged her, and I was thinking in my head, like, I hope I don't get fat in my timeline. And she wasn't even fat, but she was like, definitely her body was more endowed than mine. And so there was this older me, like maybe elderly me, I don't know. And there are these kids, and I knew that these the baby and the kid were going to wake up from this experience just thinking it was all a dream, like maybe all just a bad dream, and maybe they remembered or not, and it didn't even matter. But this old lady me was not going to wake up from this experience just thinking it was all a dream, because it wasn't. And so I assumed that, I don't know why, I thought maybe we could all speak English, but I kind of got the sense that the child me she actually didn't speak English. She was like from another country in Europe somewhere, but we could all communicate somehow. We all knew what each other was saying. And I don't know how that worked, like maybe it was telepathy or something, but that wasn't weird, even though the kid didn't speak English and the older me knew English. We all knew what each other was saying, and whatever they were doing with us all in that room, with me in different stages of life from different timelines, whatever they were doing, it maybe like wasn't quite working out or something, I don't know, but this girl was on the table, and I couldn't tell if she was dead or if she was still alive and she was just dying, or if she would even get better. I didn't know. But it was like they didn't need us in the room anymore altogether. So the nurse kind of like shooed me back to my room, like go back to your room. So I went back to my room, and Muffin was there. Like, he's this cute beige little monkey, and he's got like brown on some parts of his body, and he just like has the cutest face. And he was sitting there on the bed, and I picked him up and I gave him another hug, and he was hugging me, and I looked down and Muffin had this tag like on the left side of his body at his hip. There was this tag, and it was on the same side of his body that my like iPod device had been when I picked it up earlier to show Peter. And there's this tag. It was like as if if a cat or a dog is wearing a collar, but this was like a waist collar. I don't know how to explain. It was like a collar on the monkey, but around his waist, and there's a little tag like about yay big, and but it was very lightweight, very thin, lightweight, but it was a digital screen. This tag was, and it was kind of like that reflective material that like construction workers or crossing guards have on their jacket to so cars watch out for them. They have bright orange jackets, but they have this like stripes of reflective material, and that's kind of what the tag like looked like and felt like, and it was very lightweight, but it seemed like a lightweight like cloth reflective material tag, but it was a digital screen. And I was holding Muffin, and I looked down on his tag, and there was a message on the tag, and it said, and I remember reading this message very clearly in like green, blocky looking letters. It said, "Trump's defeat before you return." And I was like, oh no, like, are they gonna keep me here for over a month? Because from what I had remembered, they had taken me from my timeline on October 18th, 2016. I was like, are they going to keep me here for over a month and I won't get to find out anything about the presidential election? And like, obviously this tag was telling me what might happen. And so I put Muffin down, and I turned to Nicholas and I said, hey Nicholas, I know that's not your real name, but that's just the name you've told me that your name is, so that's the name you want me to call you. So I'm going to call you Nicholas right now, but if I knew your real name, I would use it right now. Because kind of like I was prepping him, like I was telling him I'm going to ask you something important. And I said to him, I said, if something happens in my country while I'm here, will you let me know about it? Would you tell me about it? Would I be able to find out? Could I watch the news from my timeline, or would I even be allowed to know about what happened? And he didn't really know what I was referencing. He kind of asked me. He was like, what would be so important that you would want to know about while you're here? What kind of current event would that be that you'd want to watch the news for, And I told him about the presidential election of 2016, and he was kind of like, oh, like, and I told him about this message that I had read on Muffin's tag, and I looked back over at the tag, but the message wasn't there anymore, but it was something else on the tag on the digital screen, and it was in English. There was like pink blocky letters above white blocky letters, but I didn't read it because I was like sad, like that it wasn't there anymore, and I couldn't show Nicholas. But I told him, like, I unmistakably read that message. I told him what it was: Trump's defeat before you return, on Muffin's tag, and this tag somehow was correlated to my timeline or my consciousness or something. Like, this tag was somehow correlated with me, and I don't know how it worked, but that's the sense that I got, that the tag was correlated to my timeline somehow. And Nicholas looked a bit concerned, like a little taken aback, like something was happening, something was amiss, something was wrong in like a negative sense, like something bad had happened, but something was amiss, and he didn't really know what to do about it. And so he said, come near me, we're going to go to the roof. And I was like, yay, like, I'm gonna get out of this room. So I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. in my insides, in my emotions. So I put Muffin on the bed, and I got down, and I went over near him. He was standing by the window, and boom, we were like instantly on the roof of the hospital, like we had been teleported there or something. And I was like, thank God, because I could look out and I could see the city. So I was looking out there at the city. We were on top of the roof of the building, and I could see out in front of me that the buildings out there were generally smaller than the building that I was on, and the buildings next to our building were a little bit taller than the building I was on. And I was trying really hard to like notice the architecture of this city, like notice the skyline to see if there was anything familiar that I could recognize. And I knew it didn't look like Seattle, so I was like, I know I'm not in Seattle, because that's where I'm from in my real life. So I was like, I know I'm not in Seattle, and I tried to look for like landmarks that stood out, but I couldn't see any. There was just this city skyline, didn't look really discernible, but it was like morning time, and the sun was rising, and it was just so beautiful on these buildings, and they weren't really yellow or orange-ish, but the light was like reflecting off of these glassy buildings, and it was like so beautiful. And but I couldn't tell what city it was, and I wondered, what city this was. But Nicholas was there in front of me, and he goes, do you know what's going to happen next in my timeline? Do you know what's going to happen? And as if somehow like I had the capability or the abilities to know what was going to happen next in this timeline that I was in visiting with Nicholas. And obviously I knew something, or I had some kind of knowledge, like I'd learned it from Dave Wilcock or something, because I said to Nicholas, I said, well, if we're near Washington, D.C., that would be bad, because somehow I knew what kind of event it meant that I could read Muffin's tag, because I read, in my real life, you don't really read in dreams. You don't really read things like I had just read Muffin's tag, so something must be wrong. Like I was consciously remembering this experience, and I was able to read a tag on a monkey. I don't know, on this monkey. And Nicholas was a bit concerned, and he seemed a bit not agitated. He was calm about the situation, but he wanted to know some information from me, and I had the information. And I said to Nicholas, that would be bad if we're near Washington, D.C. I said, we're not near Washington, D.C., are we, Nicholas? And I wanted him to tell me where we were, but he didn't answer, really. He just seemed like he was preoccupied, like he had something else on his mind that he had to go off to, something more important than, like, dealing with me there on the roof. And there was this, like, the only way I can describe it was like a drone-looking thing, and it was hovering in the air just a little bit above head height, or above Nicholas's head height, because he was quite a bit taller than me. And it looked like a scoop, like one of those ball catchers that you catch a wiffle ball with, or that you like see at the dog park where people are like throwing the ball for their dog, where it's like a scoop with a handle, but this one was like upside down, and it was hovering in the air just above head height. And Nicholas grabbed it out of the air. Like, this was from my perspective, but it was like right here to him. He grabbed it out of the air and scanned his head with this device. It looked to me like a scoop with a handle, but it was some kind of device, some kind of technology. He scanned his head with it and put it back, and it flew away. And he turned into like a robot android looking person. And at first I was like startled. I was like, holy shit. Like, I didn't say this, but I was like, oh my goodness, like, am I in a timeline where they have AIs and androids and transhumanism, and I could tell he looked like a human, but he looked like a robot. He had like lines in his head, like he was made of parts, and his skin was like, it was super white, like those androids in Hollywood movies that I've seen. So apparently they had robots here, and I was afraid they had AI, and because I had learned about transhumanism and the AI virus from Cosmic Disclosure in my real life. And I looked over at the next building over, and it was taller than the building I was on, and it had glass windows, so you could see into the building, see into the like the offices or whatever was in the building, and I could look in the building, and I saw that most of the people looked human, but there were some of these like robot looking people walking around. And I looked back at Nicholas, but somehow I knew that all of these people had souls. Like this drone thing, like it was like hovering up there, but it tried to scan my head too, and I kind of grabbed it out of the air, and I wouldn't let it, and I just kind of let it go. But somehow I knew that everyone here had souls, and they weren't cyborgs, and if I let the drone thing scan my head and I looked like a robot, everything would be okay. Somehow I knew that, but I was still scared that there was transhumanism in this timeline, and I remembered what Nicholas, or what Peter had said to me earlier in my stay at the hospital. What Peter had said, that whatever timelines you give more energy to, they're more likely to happen. They're more likely to come true because they're stronger. And so I wanted to give more energy to a timeline where, you know, everyone ascends, and we have an evolution in consciousness and spirituality and better technology and a better lifestyle, and maybe even like that sun flash that Corey Good and David Wilcock are always talking about, like that we have ascension. I wanted to give more energy to the ascension timeline. So I went over to these girls. So like we were on the roof of the hospital, but it was almost like we were out in public. Like we were on the street corner, like the front entrance to the hospital, but we were on a roof. And so there were these girls, these young girls, maybe late teens, early 20s, going up the steps to like another part of the hospital in the building, and outside. And I went over to them, and I tried to convince them, like, never to let this device scan their head so that they would turn into a robot zombie drone and, you know, AI android robot and give over to transhumanism. And I was like trying to convince these girls not to turn into robots or not to give over to transhumanism. And they were like, they kind of laughed at me. They're like, oh, I would never do that. Being a biological organism is so cool. And I was like, oh, okay. So like maybe I've convinced them that transhumanism isn't a good way to go, or maybe they already knew, because she thought that being a biological organism was really cool to do, and they didn't want to turn into robot cyborgs with chips in their hand and everything like they might want to do in my timeline, in our timeline. So I knew that like she was cool with it, that she wasn't gonna turn into that transhumanism and the AI virus wasn't gonna take over their society. And so I walked back to Nicholas, but there's this sign near the front step, the front stoop of this hospital was a sign. And you know how when you go into hospitals, when you like driving into the parking lot and there's a long list, a big sign with long list, it's like radiology this way and maternity this way and, you know, this doctor this way or whatever. It's like a directional sign to tell you where to go for the different, you know, places in the hospital. And that's what this sign was. And I looked at the sign, and the letters were like backlit, and most of the lines were blue, but some of them were red, and very blocky, again, like blocky but thinner a little, but like the same font that I had read on Muffin's tag. And they were English letters that I recognized. I was like, oh, like, how is this in English? How is this sign? And the words were English too, like I could read them. And I was like, how is this in English? Am I on Earth? Like, I must be on Earth. Hope so. Because there's like aliens and robots walking around. But this sign, I was looking for a sign that told me what the hospital was called. And this sign was just the list of like where to go. And I was looking at the top because I was hoping that the sign at the top of this list would say what hospital it was. Like some hospitals are called what the city or the place is that they're at, and that's what I was looking for, like Seattle Children's Hospital, but there was nothing like that, no title on this sign that I could see what the hospital was called. So I just kind of like discounted that sign, even though like now I think back on it and I wish I could have read what was on the sign, because I knew that they were English and that they were words that I recognized, that I could read. But in dreams, you don't read stuff, right? And if you look away, and you look back, things appear in gibberish. But this sign wasn't in gibberish, and I looked back to Nicholas because I wanted to know where I was, and I looked at the sign again, but I couldn't see the title. So I just went back over to Nicholas, but the sign looked the same. When I was, after this experience, I had remembered that I read something that you don't read in dreams, but I had read this sign. But I wish now that I had remembered what some of the lines had said, but I didn't. I just didn't pay attention because I was looking for the name of the hospital, and this sign wasn't that. So I went back over to Nicholas, and he just had his head in his hand, and he's kind of like rolling his eyes at me like, oh gosh, like I had somehow broken his timeline by mentioning transhumanism to these young, innocent, like girls from the public, or maybe like I had broken some kind of social faux pas about telling them about transhumanism, and he was just like, oh goodness, like, and he said to me, we don't have transhumanism here, and or like he said, we don't have transhumanism in this timeline. He said both of those things with his words. He said, we don't have transhumanism here. We don't have transhumanism in this timeline. And these people, they had the capability to communicate with words and speech, but they also had the capability to send packets of info, like telepathically almost, like intuitively with their words. They had the capability to send packets of info, of knowledge into my head. And that's what happened when it was almost like they did this when what they needed to explain took more time and energy to explain than they had at the moment. Because it's gonna take me some time to explain to you what the packet of info sense that I got from Nicholas was about why they didn't have transhumanism and the AI virus in their society or in this timeline. But in real time, like, it just was an instance. Like, it only took as long as it took for him to say, we don't have transhumanism in this timeline. And I thought maybe, like, he might be lying to me, because he was clearly kind of like this robotic human looking person. Maybe it kind of made sense that he was a machine, because he was always in my room whenever I woke up. He was always there to take care of me, and maybe he was deceiving me because he was a robot. But his mind thought sending process was kind of like, no, there's no like shady deception like that here in my society. And the info that he sent to me was that in his timeline, we were in America, and it was 2016, and to him, and in this packet of info, it was like all of this technology that you see around you really only started to happen to us after the year 2000. And so kind of like in our history where the our technology sort of started to grow kind of in the 80s, and then in the 90s we got internet and cell phones, like kind of archaic cell phones, but then after the year 2000 it started to pick up, like it started to blossom more. And same with him and his timeline, they started to get a lot more technology after the 80s, 90s, and then really more started to blossom after the year 2000. And so they had flying crafts and maybe even free energy, and I don't think they had money there. They didn't have to go to their jobs like we do, 9 to 5. They did it because they wanted to, and they weren't on the same kind of schedule that we were. And the sense I got from him was that they knew about transhumanism and the AI virus, but somehow they had technology to detect it and to neutralize it. And so there wasn't that, they knew about transhumanism, but there wasn't that sense that there was a risk of it kind of taking over the planet and controlling the populace and turning them into kind of cyborgs. But my sense from him was that he understood, or he believed, was under the impression that these robot people, these machine people, they had souls, and that he believed that they were going to ascend with the Ascension event, that like the one I had learned in my timeline. And they were somehow kind of like organic machines or something. Or maybe they weren't even from this planet, that his peoples weren't even from Earth, but this was his home now. Earth was his home now, because this society didn't, it was like he lived in a post-disclosure society where this society had open contact with ETs, and he told me in this packet of info he sent that there was no way that the military-industrial complex could have formed in his history. So I was visiting a timeline where there was no military-industrial complex, and the government had been honest and open with the peoples about ETs and flying saucers, like back in the day. And I wanted to know more about that, like how did that happen? How could that have been that there was no military-industrial complex in your history that like messed with all this stuff, with our food industry and our medical industry and our economy and everything? And he was just kind of like, the sense from him was like, man, you really got it bad, like over there in your timeline. And he told me that back in the day when the Germans, this was his history, when the Germans had flown over the Capitol building with their flying saucers, the government, the American government at the time, instead of working with the Germans, instead of giving in to their threat and being greedy and wanting the technology for themselves and assimilating Germans into their government and their into the American government, they told the American peoples, or maybe whoever the president was at the time, the government felt that it was more important for the American people to know what was happening, to be aware of, to publicly be aware of what the Germans were doing. They felt like that was more of a snub in the face of the Germans than collaborating with them and greedily like wanting to develop the technology for themselves. So the Germans never got, in his timeline, they never got the industrial might and power to build out their galactic infrastructure and keep it from the populace and keep it all a secret. And so in his society, nobody, in our society, there are people that don't believe that ETs exist. But in his society, that wasn't even a thing. That wasn't even possible. Because back in the, very late 40s or early 50s or whatever, the government had been honest with America about this stuff. And then I got the sense from him that later on, after that happened, there was some upheaval, there was some conflict, maybe even like a World War III, but not really a war between countries on Earth. It was more of like a ET benevolent and negative war with human involvement. Just like Corey Good says is kind of going on now, there's a covert or invisible World War III going on in our time right now in 2016. That's a war between the benevolent and the malevolent ETs, but it's covert, like it's not publicly open, and it's a covert World War III going on. But in Nicholas's timeline, this was a public thing going on, and it had come out later that the Germans were, of course, the Nazi Germans were working with the bad guys, the Draco, the mean, malicious guys. And conversely, because the American government had done the right thing by telling the people instead of keeping it a secret, they had received help from benevolent ETs during this conflict or whatever it was, and thus society progressed from there, and they were able to have open contact because the disclosure happened. So they lived in like a post-disclosure society where they were at least 20 to 50 years more advanced than we are, because they'd had disclosure back in the day. And of course, in our history, we took a rocket to the moon and took people to the moon, but they didn't have to do that in the 1960s or whenever we went to the moon, because they had ET disclosure, and of course they got all the technology, and then they went exploring out into the solar system, and they had help from benevolent ETs to do that. So that's how Nicholas's society got to the place where it was, and how I knew that, this world we live in is crap. And the sense that I got from him was that after 2012, they were all wanting their Ascension event, but it didn't happen. And of course, like, they were encouraged by some off-world race, maybe even the Blue Avians, I don't know, some part of the Sphere Being Alliance, maybe even that they needed to, and maybe they even got quarantined or whatever, but they were approached and they were told that they needed to help heal the other timelines because this negativity was in their solar system, on their planet. It was still there, but it didn't have the governmental control that it does in our history. And that they were so much more advanced and so much more conscientious and aware, and they had more advanced technology than we do, that they had to help heal the timelines so that we could all join on the optimal temporal reality, like Corey Good says, the optimal temporal reality, or the optimum timeline all together, and we could all ascend. Basically, that's the story that came from Nicholas when he said, we don't have transhumanism here. We don't have transhumanism in this timeline. And then I was like, oh, well, that's great. And I got all this info. And then I wanted him to tell me what city I was in. And he didn't. He just said to me, just stay here. And I was like, okay, because he had more important things to do than baby me on the roof. And so he left. I don't even know how he left. He could have teleported, or he could have, like, zipped up and out into the sky really quick. I don't know, maybe his robot suit made him into a jetpack. I don't know. But Nicholas was gone, and he left me alone there on the roof of the hospital. And he told me to stay there, just stay here, he said to me, but I didn't know if I should just stay there and wait for him to come back, or if he was coming back, or, but I didn't want to stay there. I wanted to get out and explore this city, and maybe find out what city it was that I was in. I wanted to find a library. I wanted to go out into the street and take this shuttle thing that looked like public transportation over there. So, I mean, we were on a roof of the hospital, but it was like we were on the street. That was pretty cool to me. So I went over to the like front steps. Like, there's these steps going down to the like, I guess it was like the platform area where the shuttles go, take off and come, and I went over to the steps, and there's these 3 boys, and they were young. They kind of looked like skater boys. They had on like dark colored hoodie sweatshirts and dark colored pants, you know, like kind of jeans sort of looking with lots of pockets, but they weren't any jeans that I had seen. And they had these skateboard looking things, like kind of leaning up. There's 3 of them. They're leaning on the railing, and they had these skateboard looking things leaning up against their leg, and they just look like these young skater boys, like hanging out, up to something, doing something. But I went up to them, and their skateboard looked like a skateboard, but it looked different than a skateboard that I've seen in my real life. This kind of looked like a fancy sports car skateboard. Like the wheels had like wheel covers, like on a fancy sports car, and this thing looked slick, you know, but it looked well loved. Like, they had used this thing, and it could have even been like a technology, like a hoverboard, like in Back to the Future or something, for all I know. Like, looked like a skateboard, but it was a little more fancy. And they were leaning up against the railing, and I went up to them, and I said, because it was kind of loud. It was like it was very bustling and a lot of activity going on, and it was pretty loud. And I went up to the boys, and I said, "What city am I in?" And they said, "Anaheim." Like, one said Anaheim, and then the other one said North. Like they were trying to give me specific details about where I was. And then this boy here, most near to me, he said Anaheim, and he said something else that sounded like the state name. And my conscious brain knew that Anaheim was a city in the United States, but I didn't know what state it was in. And this boy, over the bustle and the loudness of the street, he told me the state, but I didn't understand. I didn't hear clearly what he had said. I only heard the consonant sounds k, l, n, like the sounds of the consonants C, L, and A, kind of like but jumbled in a word that I didn't quite hear correctly, because it was the street was loud. And the other boy had said North, and I was trying to clarify with them, like, Anaheim, North Carolina, and they were like, no, like, just Anaheim, just remember Anaheim. And I was like, okay. So I knew I could remember Anaheim, but these boys, it didn't seem strange to them that someone would stumble out of the hospital, this particular hospital building, and not know what city they were in, or maybe even not know what day it was. Like, these boys they were just boys hanging out in the public, out on the street, but it wasn't strange to them. And I kind of got the sense to them that if what was happening in my timeline, like if the activity, whatever was going on in this hospital, obviously they're trying to heal timelines or something. If it was happening in my timeline, the only way that we would know how to describe this was a conspiracy theory. And that would be the only box that people from my time or my world, or the people that could watch this YouTube video, that's the only way that they could just put into a box of what was going on in this hospital would be under conspiracy theory. But to these boys, there was no such thing as conspiracy theory. There was no like shadow governmently deception kind of workings going on, and I just kind of found that fascinating, that they just didn't even think anything of the fact that like this was a normal occurrence, that I would stumble out of this particular hospital not knowing what city I was in, and I would ask them, and they would be they just seemed so kind, so like generous, and like they just told me, and somehow they knew that they needed to tell me. Like at first they tried to give me this specific detail, but they were just like, no, like she's too confused and it's too distracting here in the city, and they just said, just remember Anaheim. They're like trying to yell over the noise of the city, and I was like, okay, like I can do that. I can remember Anaheim, and I wanted to go out into this city and kind of explore, and I just kind of figured I'd find my way around somehow, and I went to go down the steps, the front steps, down to maybe find a bus or something, I don't know, but I remembered that my consciousness was still plugged in and very much connected to my body. And I was like, oh, if I can just think hard enough about my body, I can go back there. I can go back home, because by this time I wanted to go home. I'd been there long enough. I was a little homesick, like wondering when they were gonna return me, but they hadn't. And I was like, oh, I can go back home to my body, to my real life. I didn't think to my real life in this experience, but I tried really hard, quite a few times, like to think about my body and bring my consciousness back to my body, but I was having a little difficulty because it was kind of like a skill that I knew how to do, but I wasn't very practiced at, and I was having some resistance because I wanted myself to remember that I was about to wake up from this experience like it was a dream, but this wasn't a dream, that this wasn't a dream. And I wanted to make sure that I remembered to myself, that I could remember that I was in Anaheim, and that city was familiar enough to me, and I could take that knowledge and info back to when I woke up. And I wanted to assure myself that I would remember that I'd had this experience when I woke up. I was about to wake up like it was a dream, but it was not. And so I was like, okay, and I was assured that I would know that this wasn't a dream, even though I was about to wake up like it was. And I thought really hard, like consciousness teleportation back into my body. And I figured, while I was doing it, if I can just get in my body and roll over and the floor is right there, then, because in my real life, my bed is a futon on the floor. It's not like a regular bed up off the floor, and it wasn't like this hospital bed that I stayed in, where it's like a regular bed where you get up off the bed, you get out of the bed, and you have to put your feet down over the bed and onto the floor. And I knew that if I could just think hard enough to my body, if I could possibly roll over and touch the floor, even if my eyes were closed, and then I could open my eyes and recognize that I was unmistakably back in my room, in my little studio apartment, and it looked like my place, and that I was unmistakably back in my body, that I knew that I would be back, and it wasn't just another one of Peter and Nicholas's virtual reality experiments in the hospital, and that I was unmistakably back in my life, and I wasn't in the hospital again, that I wasn't going to wake up in the hospital in that bed again. And so when I thought back to my body, I came back into my body, but somehow I didn't even need to roll over. I knew that I was just back there, and I opened my eyes immediately, looked at my watch, and my watch said 6:30. And so I immediately checked my iPod, because I knew that I'd had that experience before where my watch was a different time than my iPod. So I looked on my iPod and it said 6:30, and I was like, what date is it? Oh my goodness. And it was the correct date that I was supposed to have woken up in, October 18th, 2016. And it was only 3 hours after I had gone to sleep at 3:30. And I was like, I didn't even feel like I had gotten 3 hours of sleep, let alone a total of like 6 to 7 hours that night. I literally felt like I hadn't taken much more than a little 30-minute cat nap. And I literally felt like I had lived for 3 days in this 3-hour time span. And I kind of laid back to kind of like ingest or like digest this experience that I had just experienced 3 days in the span of 3 hours. And you know how when you have to spend 3 days in a hospital, or even in somebody else's house, or you go on vacation or something, and then you come home that day and you go to sleep, and you wake up the next morning and you're back in your house, in your room, but you just don't feel like getting up, and you don't feel like going to work the next day. And that's totally how I felt. Like, I didn't feel like getting up, but I had to get up that day and go to work. And then I was laying in my bed, and my computer screen was off, but then it flipped on again. Like I'd just gotten back in my body, checked my watch, checked my iPod, and my computer screen came on. And I was like, what is wrong with my computer screen? With my computer, is it like on the fritz? Is it breaking down? Is it gonna crash on me or something? But I put the computer to sleep, and I kind of remembered that electronics behave in a funny way when people have alien abduction experiences. Even though this didn't seem like an alien abduction experience, this seemed like a out of the matrix, out of time experience. This seemed like, oh, how convenient of these people to have this technology to heal the timelines, but they have this technology to pull people out of their bodies when they're sleeping at night. And so they're still getting sleep and rest, and then they wake up and they don't even remember, or they just remember it as a dream. Like, that's so handy and convenient. And I was like, oh, I wonder where Anaheim is, because that was like the only connection that I had to a geographical location of where the heck it was that I was at. Even though I knew that it was America, and it was 2016 according to Nicholas. But I looked on my iPod and looked it up, and it said Anaheim. The first thing that came up, Wikipedia, of course, Anaheim, California. And I was like, oh, California. That's what the boys were telling me, not Carolina. But I guess over the street noise, I had only heard but it was California. And I must have looked like a bozo to those boys, because I was like, Carolina? I was like trying to read their lips, and like, you know how when you're trying to talk to someone over a loud party, and you hear what they're saying, but you're trying to like read their mouth too, so you get it better. Like, that's what I tried to do, but I totally misunderstood. They told me Anaheim, California, not Anaheim, Carolina, or like the other boy said North. So I thought maybe North Carolina, but they had actually tried to tell me that I was north of Anaheim, or like in the northern part of like Anaheim, because from this, I saw on the map that Anaheim's not in North California, but maybe I was like in the northern part of Anaheim, or to them that's where I was, but I was in Anaheim, California, regardless, and I just kind of sat back on my bed to digest. I just kind of had to like sit for a moment to I don't know, I keep wanting to use the word ingest this experience, like, I don't know, process what had just happened to me, because people, when they talk about alien abduction experiences, they talk about like missing time, and this was not missing time, this was added time, okay? This was like, I experienced 3 days within the span of 3 hours, and that was like so crazy to me. And the fact that I totally remembered every little thing just like it had happened to me like yesterday, and I very clearly had it happened to me like I was awake, and that's kind of what bothered me about this dream, is that it clearly wasn't a dream, just a dream. And I used to be a lot better at remembering my dreams more regularly, but I hadn't been lately, and so it was so unusual that this dream would just pop up, and I would remember so much of it so vividly. And I got up and I just immediately figured I needed to write it down so that I wouldn't forget. And it took me like 2.5 hours, and I wrote 10 pages. Literally, I was almost late for work. And now I'm doing this in the evening, and it's taken me a lot more time to do the videos. It's probably even 2.5 hours to tell you about it. I don't know. It might be 2 hours. So I really appreciate you for sticking it out. I hope this has been really interesting and enlightening for you, and maybe help you wake up from the Matrix too. And something else that I was thinking was odd about this dream, because I remembered reading somewhere that you don't read in dreams. The part of the brain that processes reading and letters and that part isn't active or isn't accessible while you're sleeping or dreaming. And so it was so weird that I had read very clearly this thing, Trump's defeat before you return, and I was wondering, like, well, what's going to happen in the presidential election? It'll be very interesting to me to find out what actually happens. And hopefully Trump won't be our president. And so that it was interesting to me that I could read in my dream, that I could read signs, that I could read a tag and stuff. And I clearly remembered what the letters looked like, and even like the font. If I saw the font again, I would be like, yeah, that's the font I saw in my at the hospital. And I've never woken up from a dream so assured that it wasn't a dream. And that was my thought process during this experience, is that I was going to wake up from this like it was a dream, even though it was not. And I knew that those two kids, the baby and the child, meet in that sort of, I guess, operating room, or where the girl was laying on the table almost dying, or she was like out cold, and I didn't know if she was dead, but in that room, I knew that those two kids were going to wake up from this experience. They were frightened and they didn't know what was going on. They had this kind of scared look, but they were going to wake up from this experience like it was a dream. And then I had that, at the end of the experience, really wanting myself to remember this was not a dream. And I had the total sense when I woke up from it that it wasn't a dream, that it hadn't been a dream. And that's so weird. Like I've definitely woken up from dreams and they kind of affected me after the dream, but I've never woken up and I've never had that thought process. It seems very unusual for a dream to have the thought process during the dream that you're going to wake up from this like it's a dream, but it's not. And also what was strange about this dream experience was that everything made sense. Everything was very logical, happened in a chronological order, and it made sense. And it made sense, especially not just in the dream, but it made sense in relation to my waking life. Everything that I experienced and knew in my waking life, this experience made sense in relation to that. And usually dreams, they make sense in the context of the reality of the dream, but they don't make sense in the context of your own reality when you wake up. And this dream totally did. It totally made perfect sense in the context of my place in reality right now. And even though it might seem strange that there were all these different me's and different timelines, it all came together like some kind of epiphany that there was, or there is, these other people that are us in another time in like a parallel universe, and they're trying to help us heal the timelines. And what Corey Good said in Cosmic Disclosure was that these ETs, they want us to do it. But it's not just us here on Earth with our shadow government and our military-industrial complex and our Nazi German Draco Archon infested society and government here trying to heal the timelines. It's us in other timelines trying to heal the timelines so that we all jump into the optimal temporal reality. And it's so great. So I hope that if you've stuck it out this long and you're watching the last video, the last part of my experience of this video, I really thank and appreciate you for listening, for having this knowledge, and I hope that it enriches and enlightens your life. So thank you so much for listening.